The day the Zarquestians landed on Earth started like any other for Eric Mallory. As an unassuming cultural liaison for the United Nations, he was sipping his morning coffee, half listening to a podcast about sustainable farming, when his phone buzzed with a call from his boss. Eric ignored it. Calls this early were never good news. A moment later, the voicemail icon blinked. With a sigh, he played the message. "Eric, where are you? First contact is happening right now. First contact. Get to the UN headquarters immediately. This is not a drill." Eric nearly choked on his coffee. First contact? That wasn't something he expected to deal with before lunch. He grabbed his bag, bolted out of his apartment, and was halfway to the subway before realizing he was still wearing slippers. By the time he arrived at the UN building, the place was swarming with reporters. Cameras and microphones were trained skyward at a sleek silver spacecraft hovering above the East River. It shimmered faintly, as though it were alive. Eric spotted his boss, Clara Montgomery, at the building's entrance. She looked as though she'd already aged a decade since sunrise. The second she saw him, she grabbed his arm and dragged him inside. "Eric, you're on for what?" "Cultural introductions. You're the guy who bridges gaps between species now," Clara said, shoving a tablet into his hands. "You're the best at making us seem less terrifying." "I'm a liaison, Clara, not a magician," Eric protested. "And don't we have an official protocol for this sort of thing?" Clara shook her head. "The protocol is a joke. It involves icebreakers like, 'What's your favorite movie?'" Eric was about to protest again, but the sound of footsteps, deliberate, echoing, cut him short. The Zarquestians entered the room. Eric froze. The aliens were taller than he expected, their willowy frames draped in shimmering robes. Their skin seemed to refract light like opals, and their enormous, liquid eyes radiated curiosity. Despite their strange appearance, they moved with a grace and politeness that instantly put Eric somewhat at ease. The lead Zarquestian stepped forward and bowed, a fluid motion that seemed rehearsed. "Greetings, humans," he said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "I am Vizrin, emissary of Zarquest. We have traveled light years to meet you and partake in an exchange of knowledge and culture." Eric managed to smile, though his palms were damp. "Welcome to Earth, Vizrin. We're thrilled to have you. I'm Eric Mallory, your cultural liaison. Let's start by exploring one of the most cherished parts of human culture, food." Vizrin tilted his head. "Food! An excellent beginning." Eric's relief was immediate. Food was universal, wasn't it? Everyone ate. What could possibly go wrong? Eric arranged for the Zarquestians to dine at his favorite local restaurant, a quirky fusion spot called Spice Odyssey. It was a risk, but one he thought might pay off. The restaurant was known for bold flavors and creative dishes, perfect for showcasing the diversity of Earth's culinary heritage. As they entered the restaurant, the Zarquestians marveled at the decor, a riot of color, spice racks lining the walls, and murals depicting various cuisines of the world. "Such vibrant energy," one of the aliens murmured. Eric beamed. "It reflects Earth's food culture, diverse, colorful, and full of surprises." The first dish arrived, a mild, fragrant coconut curry. Eric wanted to start them off easy. The Zarquestians delicately sampled it, with their spoon-like feeding appendages. "This is extraordinary," Vizrin declared. "What is this sensation?" "Flavor," Eric explained. "Flavor," Vizrin repeated, tasting the word as much as the curry. "It is a revelation." Encouraged by their enthusiasm, Eric ordered more adventurous dishes. buffalo wings, Sichuan hot pot, and a fiery vindaloo appeared on the table. The Zarquestians eagerly tasted everything, their curiosity boundless. "This one tingles," one alien exclaimed, pointing to the Sichuan hot pot. "That's the numbing spice," Eric said. It's called Sichuan peppercorn. It's supposed to feel a little, electric. The Zarquestians exchanged excited glances. Human food is most stimulating. Then the ghost pepper sampler arrived. Eric hesitated. Just so you know, this one is intense." "Intense?" Vizrin asked. "It's extremely spicy. Not everyone can handle it." "We Zarquestians are robust," Vizrin said confidently. "We will honor this dish as a challenge." Eric nodded. "All right, just take small bites." The Zarquestians each took a bite. Chaos erupted. Vizrin froze, his shimmering skin flashing a bright, alarming red. Marnis, another delegate, let out a high-pitched whistle that made nearby glasses vibrate. One alien leapt to their feet, arms flailing in what Eric could only describe as interpretive dance. "Water. Bring water," Eric shouted. A waiter rushed over with glasses of ice water, but the Zarquestians recoiled. "Oh, what is this substance?" Vizrin gasped, his voice strained. "Water. It helps with the heat." Vizrin sniffed the glass suspiciously. "It smells of chlorine. Is this a human weapon?" "No, it's safe, I swear." The aliens didn't trust the water, so Eric grabbed a pitcher of milk from a nearby table. "Try this. It's better than water." The Zarquestians eyed the milk with skepticism, but Marnis took a sip and immediately calmed. This is most effective." Vizrin followed, his color slowly fading back to normal. "This milk is remarkable, but why would you create food that inflicts such suffering?" "It's not suffering," Eric said defensively. "It's a challenge. Humans like pushing their limits. Spicy food is thrilling." The Zarquestians exchanged bewildered glances. "Your species actively seeks discomfort?" Eric shrugged. "We find it rewarding, and it tastes amazing." Word of the incident spread quickly. Within hours, footage of the Zarquestians flailing and turning red had gone viral. Alien media on Zarquest labeled it the Ghost Pepper Incident, and Eric's frantic attempts to hand out milk became a meme. The Zarquestian ambassador, a stern figure named Reslor, summoned Eric the next day. "Mr. Mallory, we appreciate your hospitality, but it appears your species has an alarming relationship with pain." "It's not about pain," Eric insisted. "It's about resilience and fun." Reslor raised what might have been an eyebrow. "We will reflect on this. But in the meantime, I suggest you refrain from introducing us to anything labeled extreme." Eric agreed, though he knew it might already be too late. Back at Spice Odyssey, the Zarquestians had ordered a second round of ghost pepper dishes. "Victory!" Vizrin said through gritted teeth. "Shall be ours." The spectacle at Spice Odyssey escalated rapidly. The Zarquestians, determined to conquer the Ghost Pepper Challenge, sat resolutely with fresh plates of fiery dishes before them. The staff, unsure whether to intervene or cheer them on, hovered nervously near the kitchen. Eric tried one last time to dissuade them. "You really don't have to do this. It's not a competition." "On the contrary," Vizrin said, his voice calm but his opalescent skin betraying a slight flicker of orange. "It is precisely the kind of competition that signifies respect for your culture." Eric sighed. "Respect doesn't mean torturing yourselves." "We will endure," said Marnis, lifting a piece of ghost pepper chili with a trembling appendage. The Zarquestians dove in again, chewing with determination. What followed was another round of chaotic reactions. Marnus emitted a series of clicks that sounded like a malfunctioning sprinkler system, while Vizrin stared straight ahead, his shimmering body oscillating between red and green as if fighting some internal battle. "Milk!" Eric shouted, waving for the waiter, who was already on standby with several pitchers. But this time, Vizrin waved the milk away. "No," he croaked. "Oh, we must face the fire." "Ah! You don't have to face anything," Eric groaned. Spicy food is supposed to be fun, not a death march." The Zarquestians weren't listening. Another of the delegates began emitting a low-frequency hum, which made Eric's teeth vibrate unpleasantly. By the time the ordeal ended, the Zarquestians were slumped back in their seats, their skin slowly returning to its usual opalescent shimmer. Despite their visible exhaustion, Vizrin raised a hand in triumph. "We have endured the flames of your world," he declared, "and we are stronger for it." Eric buried his face in his hands. The aftermath was swift. Clips of the Zarquestians' reactions flooded social media, turning into an intergalactic phenomenon. On Earth, the footage was met with amusement and admiration. On Zarquest, however, it sparked something else entirely. The next morning, Eric woke up to find his phone buzzing non-stop. Messages from Clara were at the top of the list. "Eric, call me. We have a situation," one said. "Call me now. It's about the Zarquestians," another read. Eric groaned and dialed her number. She picked up on the first ring. "Eric, what did you do?" "What are you talking about?" "The ghost pepper incident is trending on Zarquest. There is a viral challenge now. Zarquestians across their planet are attempting to replicate the experience." Clara's voice was a mix of frustration and disbelief. "What?" Eric sat up, rubbing his temples. "It's called the Fire Tongue Challenge. People are trying to recreate ghost peppers using their food replicators, but they don't have Earth's exact ingredients. It's turning into a mess." "A mess how?" "Let's see. Several people have been hospitalized with what their doctors are calling thermal overload. One group tried to create a concentrated pepper paste and ended up producing a substance so volatile it caused an evacuation. And that's just today's news." Eric groaned. I didn't tell them to turn ghost peppers into weapons." "Wow, congratulations. You're the face of this fiasco. Zarquestian media has been showing clips of you at Spice Odyssey all morning. They're calling you the ambassador of heat." "Great," Eric muttered. "So, what's the plan?" "You're going back to Zarquest," Clara said. "They've requested your help to calm this chaos. Apparently, you're the only human they trust to guide them." Eric had 100 reasons to say no, but none of them seemed convincing enough. By evening, he was aboard a Zarquestian spacecraft, once again traveling light years to fix a problem he hadn't meant to create. When they arrived on Zarquest, Eric was greeted by Vizrin and a crowd of eager Zarquestians holding signs that read things like "Bring the Heat" and "Spice Warriors Unite." Vizrin greeted him warmly. "Eric Mallory, we owe you a great debt. Your ghost peppers have awakened a new chapter in our culture." "A chapter of mass hospitalizations?" Eric quipped. Vizrin laughed, the sound tinkling like wind chimes. "There are always growing pains in progress." Eric was whisked to a meeting with Zarquestian officials who were less enthusiastic than the crowds. Reslor, the stern ambassador who had earlier chastised Eric, wasted no time voicing his concerns. "Mr. Mallory, your species' recklessness with food has turned our planet into chaos. We need immediate intervention." Eric raised his hands. "I never intended for this to happen, but if you'll let me, I think I can help." Reslor crossed his arms. And how do you propose to undo this disaster? Eric took a deep breath. Education. We can teach people how to handle spices responsibly. Start with milder flavors, work up gradually, and emphasize the importance of balance. Bizrin nodded. An excellent idea. Perhaps we could host workshops. Our people are eager to learn. And competitions, Eric added. Controlled competitions with clear safety protocols. If people want to challenge themselves, we can give them a safe way to do it. Reslor hesitated, but after a long moment, he nodded. Very well, but you will oversee this initiative. If it fails, the blame will be yours. Fair enough, Eric said. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Eric worked with Zarquestian chefs, scientists, and community leaders to develop a comprehensive spice education program. Workshops were held across the planet, teaching Zarquestians the basics of seasoning, spice tolerance, and how to pair flavors. The highlight of the initiative was the announcement of a grand competition, the Spice Summit. Contestants from across Zarquest would showcase their creativity and mastery of earth spices in a series of challenges, all under Eric's careful supervision. The Spice Summit quickly became the most talked-about event on Zarquest. As the day approached, Eric couldn't help feeling a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could turn this disaster into something positive. The Spice Summit was held in Zarquest's largest arena, a glittering crystalline amphitheater that seemed to hum with anticipation. Thousands of Zarquestians filled the seats, their opalescent skin shimmering in hues of excitement, while countless more tuned in via galactic broadcasts. The atmosphere was electric, the crowd's collective curiosity palpable. Eric stood backstage with Bizrin, both of them overseeing the final preparations. Plates of carefully prepared earth-inspired dishes lined long tables, their scents filling the air with tantalizing aromas. "This is quite the turnout," Eric remarked, trying to mask his nerves. "Our people are eager to engage," Bizrin replied. "Your spices have ignited something within us, an appreciation for the unknown." Eric scanned the crowd and spotted a group of Zarquestians wearing bright orange sashes, each emblazoned with the words, "Scoville Seekers." He groaned. "Please tell me they've learned moderation," Eric said, pointing them out. Bizrin chuckled. "They've pledged to abide by the rules, though I must admit, their enthusiasm remains unchecked." The competition began with an opening ceremony, a dazzling display of Zarquestan artistry set to the hum of melodic instruments. When it was Eric's turn to speak, he stepped forward, his voice amplified across the arena. "Welcome to the first ever Spice Summit," he began, trying to channel his inner diplomat. "Spices aren't just about heat. They're about flavor, creativity, and connection. Today, we celebrate how food can bring us together, even across the stars." The crowd erupted into applause, and Eric felt a flicker of pride. The first round of the competition was straightforward. Contestants were tasked with creating a dish that showcased balance and flavor, using earth spices in a way that honored their natural ingredients. The judges, a mix of Zarquestian culinary experts and scientists, tasted each entry with great care. Some dishes were impressive, like a Zarquestian fruit salad, lightly dusted with cinnamon and cardamom. Others were less successful, such as a glowing gelatinous soup that smelled faintly of engine grease. To everyone's surprise, the Scoville Seekers presented a beautifully spiced grain dish that incorporated ghost peppers in small, controlled amounts. The balance of heat and flavor earned them high marks, and Eric couldn't help but smile at their progress. The second round introduced a twist. Contestants had to adapt a classic Earth recipe using Zarquestian ingredients. The results ranged from brilliant to bizarre. One team created a delightful variation of tikka masala using a local root vegetable that glowed faintly in the dark. Another team attempted to make ice cream with a volatile crystal that turned the dessert into a smoking rock. As the competition progressed, it became clear that the Zarquestians had embraced earth spices not as a novelty, but as a canvas for innovation. Even Reslor, who had been watching from the judges' panel with his usual stern expression, seemed impressed. The final round, however, brought a new level of drama. The remaining contestants were given a single ghost pepper and tasked with creating a dish that celebrated its heat without overwhelming the palate. The arena fell silent as the contestants worked. The air grew tense, punctuated only by the occasional hum of Zarquestian tools and the faint crackle of alien flames. When the dishes were presented, the judges approached with a mixture of anticipation and caution. One team had crafted a delicate pepper-infused sauce served alongside a cooling, yogurt-like dip. Another had created a sweet and spicy dessert, pairing the heat of the ghost pepper with the soothing richness of a caramel-like glaze. The Scoville seekers, true to their name, had gone bold. They presented a fiery stew, its aroma so potent that the judges hesitated before taking their first bites. But the flavors were balanced, the heat tempered by layers of sweetness and tanginess that complemented the spice. When the judges announced the seekers as the winners, the crowd erupted into cheers. The seekers, once infamous for their recklessness, bowed humbly as they accepted their prize, a golden spoon engraved with the words, "Masters of Balance." Eric let out a long breath of relief. The competition had been a success, not just as an event, but as a demonstration of how far the Zarquestians had come. As the celebration wound down, Vizrin approached Eric with a radiant smile. "You've given us more than just spices, Eric. You've given us a new way to explore our creativity." Eric laughed. "All I did was show you how to avoid burning your mouths off." "And in doing so," Vizrin said, "you've sparked a movement. Food is no longer just sustenance for us. It is a form of expression." Later that evening, as Eric sat in his temporary quarters overlooking the glowing Zarquestian skyline, he received a message from Clara. "Well done," her voice said. "ZarQuest is buzzing with praise for the Spice Summit. They're calling it the start of a culinary renaissance." Eric smiled and leaned back in his chair, the tension of the past few weeks finally fading. But just as he closed his eyes, his communicator buzzed again. This time, the message wasn't from Clara. It was from another planet entirely. The screen displayed a message in translated text. "Greetings from the Morvolan Culinary Council. We have heard of your earth spices and wish to invite you to share your expertise with our people. Please advise on the necessary arrangements." Eric groaned and dropped his head into his hands. "Here we go again." Eric stared at the message on his communicator, feeling equal parts dread and resignation. The Morvolans, as he recalled from a briefing he had skimmed months ago, were amphibian-like beings, with diets centered around algae, fungi, and a nutrient-rich slime that humans could only describe as questionably edible. The thought of introducing earth spices to them felt like jumping from the frying pan into the fire, or perhaps into a vat of Morvolan slime. The Zarquestians, however, were thrilled by the development. "This is a monumental moment," Vizrin said, clasping his shimmering hands. "The Morolans are known for their reserved nature. If they are reaching out, it is a sign that your spices are uniting the galaxy." "Or igniting it," Eric muttered, but he knew there was no saying no. If the Zarquestians could embrace Earth's culinary chaos, perhaps the Morvolans could too, with enough preparation. Within days, Eric found himself aboard a Morvolan transport ship, the vessel's interior damp and dimly lit to accommodate its aquatic passengers. He tried not to think too hard about the slimy residue coating the walls. The Morvolan delegation that greeted him was polite, if a bit unnerving. Their bulbous eyes blinked out of sync, and their voices carried a wet, gurgling undertone that made it hard to tell when they were serious. Their leader, Ambassador Thulvak, greeted him with a solemn bow. "We have heard of the fire that lives in your food," Thulvak said, his voice echoing faintly in the humid air. "We wish to understand it." Eric plastered on his best diplomatic smile. "I'm happy to share, but I should warn you, our spices can be intense. It's important to start small." Thulvak waved a slimy appendage dismissively. "We are not easily deterred. Begin your teachings." The first session took place in a sprawling underwater chamber converted into a kitchen. Eric had been provided with an array of earth spices, along with what the Morvolans considered their finest ingredients: various slimes, spore clusters, and something that looked suspiciously like kelp, but emitted a faint, eerie glow. He decided to start simple, mixing turmeric and cumin into a mild stew using the kelp-like plant. The result was surprisingly palatable, and the Morvolans seemed intrigued. "This is different," Thulvak said after tasting it, his bulbous eyes narrowing. It does not sting as we expected." "That's because it's not supposed to sting," Eric explained. "Not all spices are about heat. Some are about adding depth and warmth to a dish." The Morvolans nodded thoughtfully, their gills fluttering. Eric allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Maybe this would be easier than he thought. Then someone asked about ghost peppers. It started innocently enough. One of the younger Morvolans, a curious being named Polvik, pointed to a bright red pepper in Eric's spice kit and asked, "What is that?" Eric hesitated. "That's a ghost pepper. It's one of the hottest peppers on Earth. I wasn't planning to use it." "What not?" Polvik asked, his gills quivering with interest. "Because it's complicated," Eric said carefully. "It can be overwhelming if you're not used to it." Thulvak's eyes glistened with determination. "We are Morvolans. We thrive in extremes. Let us experience this ghost pepper." Eric knew he should refuse. He had learned his lesson with the Zarquestians, but the Morvolans were insistent and he didn't want to risk offending his hosts. Reluctantly, he agreed, on one condition. "I'll prepare a dish with ghost pepper, but it'll be heavily diluted," he said. "You'll only get a hint of the heat." The Morvolans agreed, and Eric set to work. He created a small batch of spiced broth, adding the tiniest sliver of ghost pepper to the mix. The dish was served in small portions, and Eric held his breath as the Morvolans tasted it. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Thulvak's gills fluttered and Polvak's eyes widened. Then the reactions began. Thulvak let out a deep, gurgling bellow that reverberated through the chamber. Polvik flailed his appendages wildly, emitting a series of high-pitched squeals. Other Morvolans dove into the water, their glowing bodies flashing erratically as they swam in frantic circles. Eric grabbed a pitcher of water and a container of earth yogurt he'd brought as a precaution. "Try this," he shouted, offering the yogurt. Thulvak eyed the yogurt suspiciously. "What is this strange paste?" "It'll neutralize the heat." Thulvak took a tentative scoop, his gills shuddering as the cooling effect took hold. He nodded approvingly, then passed it to the others. Gradually, the chaos subsided. "This fire is unlike anything we have known," Thulvak said, his voice raspy but awed. "It is both pain and exhilaration." "More pain than exhilaration, probably," Eric muttered. Despite the incident, the Morvolans were fascinated. Thulvak declared that earth spices were a gift of intensity, and insisted that their people must learn to wield them responsibly. To Eric's relief, the Morvolans embraced a cautious approach, starting with milder spices and experimenting under his guidance. He introduced them to cinnamon, paprika, and even a hint of chili powder, carefully balancing each dish to suit their aquatic palates. Weeks later, as Eric prepared to return to Earth, Thulvak presented him with a shimmering token of gratitude, a delicately carved shell embedded with glowing kelp. "You have shown us the fire of your people," Thulvak said, "and with it you have sparked new possibilities." Eric accepted the gift with a smile, though he couldn't help wondering how long it would be before another species sent him a similar request. As the ship lifted off from the Morvolan homeworld, he leaned back in his seat and sighed. "Just spices," he murmured to himself. "How did it come to this?" The communicator on his wrist buzzed. With a sinking feeling, Eric glanced at the screen. A new message had arrived. This time, it was from a coalition of species on the other side of the galaxy. The subject line read, "Invitation to the Galactic Culinary Congress." Eric groaned. "Here we go again."